consumer businesses is increasingly becoming the lifeblood of the NFL in 2021. Of course, they still make their money from the media rights and the IP rights and sponsorship deals and tickets and merchandise and so forth. But those business lines are mature, at the very least. And right now, the NFL is focused on developing its consumer database. Going into this season, there were 120 million names and email addresses on the NFL's database, and it's grown by 2 million already this year just through ticket sales. And what this information is doing is it's allowing teams in the league to be much more global and much more thoughtful about where it's sending its messages and what kinds of people it's hoping to get money from. For as long as sports have existed, team marketing departments are mostly ticket-based businesses. It's mostly trying to get people to buy tickets. But of course, you have to live within a certain mileage radius to buy tickets to games. The NFL is more and more looking at global fans. So through mobile ticketing, but also through things like Madden, the NFL is learning to find people where they are. A great story I wrote about this summer was the Kansas City Chiefs finding new fans who said they were fans of the Chiefs through the NFL video game Madden. They'd never been to a game, never bought merchandise, but they might live 2,000 miles away, but play the Chiefs in Madden. And that's the sort of the data that they're using to find new fans and also share that data with new sponsors, dramatically increasing the value of the sponsorship deals in addition to finding new fans. For the Sports Business Journal, I'm Ben Fisher.
Thank you, Ben. Ben Fisher from Sport Business Journal. You're watching Leaders Live in partnership with InFrontX. Good to have you along.
And as we've been discussing, the process of collecting and utilising fan data is one of the hottest topics around in sports at the moment, and it's also the basis for our latest special report. The report is free to access and provides a holistic view on what rights owners need to be thinking about when it comes to owning the fan relationship, with expert advice from executives at Major League Soccer, Volleyball World, Tennis Channel and the Chicago Bulls. Visit leadersinsport.com/fan report to download your copy.
So, we have heard a US perspective on CRM and fan data. Time to get a view from a little closer to home here in London. One of the summer's standout sporting events was, of course, the 100, the new short-form cricket tournament for men and women run by the England and Wales Cricket Board. A big success all round, but in many ways now the hard work begins for the ECB as they are busy digging through the data. Joining us on the line to tell us how they are going about that and a lot more besides, delighted to have with us Alison Crowe, Director of Digital and Data at the England and Wales Cricket Board. Alison, great to see you.
Likewise. Hi, David. Hi, Cameron.
And we're going to start with the same question that we posed to Russell right at the start. In your view, in the ECB's view, what does a great CRM system look like?
It's interesting because I think a lot of what's been said already definitely resonates with me. In terms of great CRM, it's all about getting the right balance of content, frequency, timeliness and personalisation, and overall being authentic doing that. So it all really has to start with the audience and with the objectives that need to be put in place. And those can be very different depending on the audience in question. For example, a couple of examples from us. So over the last kind of 12 to 18 months, we've definitely discovered that there is such a thing as too frequent email communications, even for our high affinity cricket audiences. So we've reduced the frequency, and as a result, have now seen some of our kind of best performing emails this year around the India and Ashes squad announcement emails. We've seen overall the metrics just increase from 2019 and 2020 in terms of open rates. So all of that is about kind of tweaking an ongoing process. In terms of the 100, which I think we'll probably come on to talk about quite a lot today, it was very different. This is building a brand new audience. So the approach and the objectives in terms of CRM had to be very different. And certainly to start with, none of that was cricket-led. It was all about creating a new audience, communicating with them in a way that resonated in order to kind of try and get that loyalty started.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting with the 100. There's inevitably with any new tournament an element of a novelty factor in terms of people attending, people who might have never been to or watched a cricket match before. Just tell us a little bit about the journey that you hope to take those people on in, I guess, turning them from spectators who have a curiosity to avid fans.
Well, to start with, it was quite a challenge, really, because we didn't have a product to share with them. It had not happened before, so therefore it was all about trying to tell them what to expect. So, as I mentioned, we deliberately didn't produce a lot of cricket content for either our social channels or our email communication, because we didn't want the algorithms to work in such a way to influence the kind of established cricket audience. We wanted to be reaching this new family audience and attract them to the competition. So the campaigns really needed to reflect this. And a lot of what we did focused on this idea of what does a day out at the 100 look like? What can people expect? It's not just about cricket, but also the music and the entertainment on show. And in the kind of immediate run-up to the competition, we very much had a countdown to the match day, so helping people understand what it was they needed to bring. Russell mentioned about digital tickets earlier on. All tickets for the 100 were digital in the 100 app, so therefore making sure customers had downloaded the app, had got their tickets, were bringing along a charged mobile phone so that they could get in without any difficulty. And also just providing more in-depth information about the venues. So for people who weren't necessarily familiar with Lords or Edgbaston and were going along to a cricket ground for the first time, what kind of thing could they expect? So that was a really kind of interesting challenge. I think the second element that we have to look at right now is obviously the competition lasts for 30 days. The rest of the year, you don't want that to end up being a wilderness, particularly for the new customers who have experienced the 100 for the first time. So those retention plans and what that looks like going into year 2 is really critical. But now that we've got a lot of content from year 1, we're able to share much more. Again, this isn't just an email CRM play, but sharing that across all of our digital ecosystem. We'll be able to share information about the world-class cricket, remind people of the competition from this summer, focus on the event experience, focus on the music, some of the music acts that we're playing, and just really force home some of the messaging around entertainment. And this then helps going into 2022 when we're thinking about what the fixture calendar will look like and going into ticket buying windows. So probably the third area as well, just thinking about those new audiences, is we're very, very conscious that we have a cricket portfolio. Some of our audiences will already have engaged with some of our other cricket content digitally. And so we have a fan data platform in place where we're able to understand more about our audiences in terms of their behaviour and being able to enhance the explicit data we have about people in terms of their ticket buying, their attendance, what they've engaged with, and add to that in terms of other data points from how they're looking at our cricket content online. We're then able to kind of provide other opportunities and signpost other cricket products, cricket formats, playing opportunities, some of our national programmes, for example, to these audiences where we know they're already engaged.
And definitely a very interesting case study indeed, as you say there, not just engaging with existing fans and not just bringing people in for the day, but turning people who come in into new long-term avid fans. And so I'm going to ask you a question that we asked Russell earlier, but I anticipate a very different answer. What data is there about these fans and these would-be fans that you don't have but would like to?
It's a really good question. I think don't always have, or we're always able to do, is kind of join up this full circle around what we call kind of play, follow and attend. So historically we've had kind of pockets of that information, But now, over the course of the last couple of years and putting in place some kind of registration and single sign-on processes across our platforms, we're able to join that up quite a lot more. So thinking about the ecosystem, again, as Russell said, it's not just about CRM. And I suppose in our case, CRM is less about the sales side of things, but more about the communication. But thinking about the content that people are engaging with, where they are on social channels, the products that they're engaging with as well, being able to add all of that information together is really what we're trying to achieve. So we'd love to know, for example, what capacity our audiences have for the inclusion of more cricket in their lives. So is it the case that they're kind of frequent attendees, but it's kind of rare but regular? What is cricket competing with for them? Do they have time for more? And understanding some of the nuances around their digital customer experience. So we've got this kind of concept of explicit data that we've captured and then adding to it with more of the implicit data. I think for our established high affinity cricket audiences, we went through a research process to really understand what the value exchange was for them. So before we introduced the registration wall, going through research to understand if giving us explicit data, making sure we're not trying to capture too much, to Phil's point earlier, and what they will get in return in terms of content, exclusives, early indicators on ticket windows, that kind of thing. So we had those hypotheses, and going through the research and actual implementation has proved to kind of show the value of that value exchange. With the new audience, it's slightly different, obviously, but again, being able to understand the explicit data and using our FDP, adding some of that behavioural data on top, will really help us understand if we have the capacity to increase cricket consumption for those audiences.
We've just got a few minutes left, Alison. It's really fascinating stuff. And on a monitor just to my left, I can see Phil Sharp nodding vigorously as you were talking there. So let's bring him in for a comment and maybe a question for Alison, Phil.
Sure, yes. Thanks, David. I've got to be honest, Alison, I'm sitting here tremendously envious of you and the ECB. I think you've had a rather unique opportunity and you're doing a great job of launching what I consider to be a new product, a new experience. And I think everything you're doing sounds exciting. You're doing it the right way. I think you're also attracting, and you and I talked about this before, a new audience, a younger audience. I think one of the challenges of many sport organizations is that I can think of several, I won't name them, their audiences are aging out and they've got to attract newer ones. And I think coming up with a new, challenging, fast, the way you've done that is tremendous. I'm very envious. I literally am very excited for you. I have many questions, but one I would start at the beginning. And you talked about, I love what you talked about the campaign and not emphasizing the cricket, but actually emphasizing the experience. I would almost add a fourth category to the categories you had, which included, play, follow, etc. I would add live, because I think you can almost go lifestyle with this, and it would attract a much younger, or not attract, but it would play to that younger audience. My question is, what data and who did you go to get it, to know who to send your initial marketing messages out to? Did you segment? Did you not? It was obviously very conscious, but I'm interested in what partners you worked in to go to those audiences you've not had before to reach them, and kind of what data you were looking for there from them.
Sure. To touch on the audience point, I think it was a very deliberate strategy from the get-go in terms of attracting that new audience and having the research and the evidence behind us and behind initially marketing in terms of this is the strategy for this new competition and this is how it fits in with the portfolio of products. So all of the, thinking about this as a digital first competition as well, all of the initial data capture was around getting expressions of interest. So being able to go out, whether it was just on our own website to start with, initially in a kind of small way across some of the social channels, but then building up to have a paid campaign around that as well, so that the target audience of looking at the kind of female audience, looking at sporty families, working with existing ticket buyers and cricket fans, but contacting them in a way that was more around, is there somebody else that you could bring to cricket next year? So you may already be a ticket buyer, you may come with your mates, or you may already come as a family group, but is there anyone else that you can introduce to cricket who hasn't been before? So that was one of the kind of key areas, I suppose, that we looked at first of all, in terms of encouraging some of our existing users, but to widen their focus, and then spread that further out in terms of targeting. And I think, you know, the data that, again, for the 100 that we asked for wasn't a huge amount, so it wasn't off-putting. I think, again, Phil, or maybe it was Russell, talked about progressive profiling. That's something that we're obviously looking at, but it's not necessarily appropriate to start with. You start with a base level of data, and then thinking about, you know, some of the partners that we work with. How do we add more questions? How do we add to that explicit data as we go? Hope that answers your question.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Alison, all very fascinating stuff, and we all look keenly forward to seeing the 100 evolve and the journey there. But time has beaten us for now. It's been great to have you with us today.
Thanks very much. You're very welcome.
And Phil, likewise, fantastic to have you on the show again as our resident expert. I think we've got another date in the diary in December, so look forward to chatting again then.
Yeah, thank you. And Cameron, great to kind of virtually meet you. Great job.
Thank you as well. And that's just about it for today's edition of Leaders Live. Thanks again to Phil, Russell and Alison for being with us.
And thank you to you, Cameron. Great debut. We are back with another edition on December the 15th. We'll go again then. Something of a Christmas special, also a gamification special. In the meantime, thanks ever so much for watching. Bye-bye for now.